Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Libra and your moon in Aquarius. And right away, I thought of something. That is the combination that John Lennon had. And so we can look at this public figure to get a glimpse of how it plays out. Now, not totally, because everybody's different. Even if you have this combination, you have to look at where your sun is, where your moon is in the chart to see like some deeper influences that are present. So, for instance, both of these are air signs, they're masculine signs, and they're going to tend to be very social, very extroverted. Not extroverted like a Leo that is like over the top, although John Lennon had Aries rising, a fire sign like Leo, so very, they had that fiery part of himself, that rebellious, outwardly rebellious part of himself. But in general, that air type of extroverted nature is more akin to someone who is at a dinner party and is a witty conversationalist, for instance, and makes people laugh and just is very, very interesting, has a lot of, great conversationalist. The air signs are communicators, so it comes naturally to them. And they're highly intelligent, or should say you're highly intelligent. And, being double, this is a double air sign, that just increases this. It ups the ante, if you will. So the sun being the aspirational self is the focus in a way, because it will tell a lot about the person's aims, ambitions in the world, how they wish to shine their light. And with Libra being ruled by Venus, there is that aesthetic quality that lends itself well to the arts, or, decorating in some fashion. So let's say the sun is in the fourth house of home and family. The person may be a natural interior decorator, whether they're doing it for a living or not. If they just love doing it for their own personal pleasure, that could be the case as well. So I want to make that clear. It's not always about career. It can be about just what your passion is in life. And there is a strong connection with Libra and the law. Libra rules the seventh house, which is the house of committed partnership, but also legal affairs. The ninth house is also connected to the law, as I have discovered. My feeling about the ninth house is the laws themselves, because the ninth house is also the God house, and we have the dogma, the laws of religion, so the laws of the land, too. The seventh house is the actual courtroom action, the lawsuits, the things going on. So I could see Libra. I understand why Libra is attracted to the law. Libra is also very good at seeing multiple sides of an issue. So this is another reason why you can have a Libra become a lawyer, and it's like a gun for hire, if they're a prosecutor. That they can morph into anything and take that position. But the question becomes, do they have an authentic core with Libra, that they tend to become what is required of them, not in the same way of Pisces as a chameleon, but as somebody who personally wants that sort of acceptance or validation maybe, but more like approval. I don't know, that's not really the exact same thing. But yeah, it's similar. And so that can be brought into one's career as well, but you could be a fashion designer, you could be an educator, and especially being a double air, it could be at the higher level, be at the college level. And anything intellectual would be really, you'd be really good at, but you could be even in the entertainment field. That's always a possibility as well. Now, the moon in Aquarius. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. And so, interestingly enough, I don't see Aquarius is associated with free love, believing that nobody should own anybody and all of that. The hippie sentiment. But Aquarius is capable of being faithful because it's a fixed sign. It's also capable of being prejudiced. And Aquarius is supposed to be, I was going to just joke and say woke. Aquarius is woke. But I meant, it's supposed to be very progressive and non-biased, very humanitarian, ahumanitarian, egalitarian, meaning that everyone is equal in society. Nobody should be above somebody else. And I still believe that that's true. But when I say prejudice, because this is the emotional part of life, and when you have a fixed sign, and this is true of Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, I feel that a lot of prejudice, maybe most of it, is due to some kind of a negative experience that affected the person emotionally. And so then what they do is they overgeneralize that everyone or everything of that nature is going to be the same way. Aquarius has a reputation of being very quirky or eccentric, and part of that eccentricity can play out in terms of preferences and behaviors, depending on where the Aquarius is, emotional attitudes that don't fit the mold that you wouldn't expect. And it's because of that, it's because of the fixed modality, but also because Aquarius is very contrarian. And I think that is because they're trying to be not unconventional. So it's almost like a reflex action to be other than what other people are. And you see that a lot where a person can't like any music that is popular because, oh, it's popular. It must be lame. It must be really like bad because it's popular, and that's part of the contrarian quality of Aquarian contrarian, because Aquarius rules the 11th house of groups, the collective, and yet Aquarius wants to be apart from the group, but at the same time they really resonate with the group concept or ideal. So it's just a very strange thing. So how this can play out, and this is the more challenging version of it, is that you can be the type of person who is very romantic because of the Libra and, the 7th house being committed partnerships and Venus and all of that good stuff. And you always want to be in a relationship. And yet once you're there, you feel trapped. You feel like you can't have your own life or something like that. And that's because the Aquarius energy is very freedom loving and very individualistic, and it kind of defeats the purpose when you're trying to be in a partnership, because you have to cooperate. You can't just say my way or the highway. So even though these form a trine because they're both air, this is a perfect example of how there can still be challenges even within a so-called harmonious aspect to one another. Now I want to bring it back to John Lennon because he actually, when he met Yoko, he did what a lot of Libra people do, and they have to be with their partner all the time. And that is such a Libra thing to do, to make that person the center of your existence. Actually, what happened to him, which was a bit sad, I think, was that Yoko was very interested in the business side of things, and she spent a long time, during the day doing those things. And I think he felt kind of neglected and not given enough attention by her. Of course, that's all hearsay. We don't know if that's really true, but I wouldn't doubt it. Yoko is an Aquarius, although she is on the cusp with Pisces. So I'd like to do her chart, to be honest with you, because she's a very interesting person in her own right. But that's why he was interested in her in the first place, because she was so eccentric. And it'd be interesting to get into some of that. She was very into avant-garde types of artistic self-expression. And that is very Aquarian. And that was right up his alley. So if you are artistic, you have an artistic bent to you, even if you're not an artist yourself, you may be an aficionado of it, and you may lean towards the more modern or experimental, because it just grabs your heart in that way. And really, if you think about it, art is, to me, ultimately heart chakra based, because it is what moves us. However, there are people who are more fascinated by art from the intellectual standpoint, of course. That happens too. But I think that ultimately it's supposed to move us. I don't know. That's my opinion. Okay. So what can happen, and by the way, the moon can be your mother. And again, citing John Lennon's case. Now, John Lennon's mother was actually a Pisces, if I'm not mistaken. But Pisces is right next to Aquarius, so she may have had inner planets in Aquarius for sure. And she was like, I think, a bit of an eccentric person in her own right. So even though she had John, she was not a traditional type of mother, and he ended up living with her sister, who couldn't have children, I don't think, and it was more of that typical type of an authoritarian mother, very strict and that kind of thing. So the person who is raised by an Aquarian mother may not get a lot of nurturing, because that, even if that person is not an Aquarian sun sign, they exhibit these traits, and so they may give the child a lot of freedom, and they may talk to them at a sophisticated level from an early age, but they're not really necessarily tuning into them. They're kind of treating them like a little adult, and they might give them that freedom, but they're not necessarily being developmentally appropriate. And depending on, the person's sun sign, it may or may not affect them adversely. Typically, a Libra person, it won't be that big of a deal, because being an air sign, there is that love of the intellect. So that's not going to bother them to be treated like they are intelligent from a young age. And neither will having a lot of freedom necessarily be a detrimental thing. But you have to also look at, where's your sun sign, where's your moon sign. If it's in the 12th house, if it's in the 4th house, 8th house, you might be more emotional and it might affect you more. And if you have inner planets that maybe in Scorpio, you might feel that you were neglected somehow, and it might be something that bothers you. But what happens is that you can shut off very suddenly emotionally, and that might even be disturbing to you, but it can certainly be disturbing to someone else. And that can be due to trauma from childhood that, and I would say it could even occur not just if someone is triggering you in a negatively because of negative behavior, but even if that person is showing love to you, that might be the trigger for you to shut down and move on. And that, in the worst case scenario, that can lead to the man-eater, the woman who goes, and I was thinking if you have Scorpio rising, then you might be the femme fatale. But going from one relationship to the other and falling in love and then ghosting the person, yeah, you might be a ghoster. And but also having that sense of if you're a man, being the player, and you might be physically attractive, being like that perfect person, the Knight of Cups type of person who's very romantic and very handsome. But what is the term besides player? I was going to say Lothario, but I don't want to say that necessarily. The heartbreaker. I can't think of the. Player doesn't really cut it. I don't really mean it like that, because it's not necessarily sexual. It can be more just on the emotional. Well, the idea, the concept of emotions, really, because that's one of the challenges with this combination as well, is that you might be very abstract with your emotions, and you can really analyze them, you can really articulate them, but you can't necessarily feel them, and that can lead to ghosting behavior, moving from one relationship to the next. Libra is notorious for being indecisive, and so you might be unsure whether or not you want to commit to somebody, and then decide just to, oh, well, I'll move on to the next person. So watch out for that, because there could be like an emotional blockage that is keeping you from it's to me, it's really like trust issues. But I will say, as a Sun and Sagittarius person myself, that freedom is a real desire in people. And so it's very important that you choose wisely in relationships. Oh, yeah, here's a big thing. Being a Libra, you may have inner planets like Venus in Libra or Mars in Libra, and you may be attracted to attractive people. Well, that's a no-brainer. I mean, who wouldn't be? But you can't place too much emphasis on that in terms of their value in your life, because that could make you shallow. And then when you do that, you are going to find out the hard way that this person, and I'm not saying they always would be, if they're attractive, that they wouldn't be intelligent, because you're attractive, I'm sure, and you are intelligent, but they might not be that mentally stimulating. And you might end up being quite bored in that situation. And that would be, torture for somebody with your combination. So you have to resist the temptation to go down that route. And possibly as you get older, you begin to see that pattern and you begin to realize that it's not the way to go. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.